The strange disappearances along America's old logging roads. America built more than 400,000 miles of logging roads across its national forests over the course of the 20th century, more than 8 times the length of the interstate highway system. These roads were not built for the public. They were built for timber, to carry heavy equipment into old-growth stands that no other road could reach, to haul out the wood, and to move on. When the cutting slowed, the roads stayed behind. They became access corridors for hunters, hikers, and recreationists, and they appeared on maps with the authority of any other road, carrying none of the warnings their origins might have suggested. A Forest Service road looks like a road. It has a number, sometimes a name, often a solid line on paper. What it does not always have is a destination in any useful sense, or cell coverage, or maintain signage, or a gate that someone remembered to lock. The cases in this series did not happen in trackless wilderness. They happened on roads, near roads, or at the end of roads that the logging industry cut and the federal government inherited and the public was never quite warned about adequately. What follows are 6 disappearances connected to that infrastructure, drawn from 6 different states, spanning several decades. Some have been partially resolved, some have not. None of them have been fully explained. The road that should have been locked. The death of James Kim on BLM Road 34836, Oregon. In December 2006, a family of 4 from San Francisco drove down one of these roads in the dark, in a snowstorm, in a Saab station wagon, and the road held them there for 9 days. James Kim was 35 years old in November 2006, a technology analyst and on-air personality who had spent years reviewing consumer electronics for Tech TV and later for CNET. He was known in technology circles, recognizable to a particular audience that followed gadget journalism, and his professional identity was bound up with the idea of understanding how things worked. He had grown up in Louisville, Kentucky, graduated from Oberlin College in 1993, worked as a legal assistant and a script reader for Miramax before finding his way into technology media. He and his wife Katie owned 2 retail stores in San Francisco. Their daughters were 4-year-old Penelope and 7-month-old Sabine. The family had spent Thanksgiving in Seattle and were driving home on the 25th of November, 2006, southbound on Interstate 5 through Oregon, intending to stop overnight at Tututoon Lodge near Gold Beach on the coast. It was a straightforward holiday drive. It became something else at a single missed exit. The turn they needed was at Oregon Route 42, which branches west from Interstate 5 toward the coast. The Kims missed it. Rather than backtracking, they consulted a paper highway map and identified what appeared to be a viable alternate route: Bear Camp Road, a secondary road that cuts through the mountains of the Wild Rogue Wilderness in southwestern Oregon. The map carried a small printed warning: "Not all roads advisable. Check weather conditions." But this notation appeared in a corner box, easy to overlook. Bear Camp Road is used sparingly in winter, even by local residents who know its steep grades and exposure to snow. It rises to 4,300 feet before descending toward the coast, and it does not behave in November the way a road is expected to behave. As the Kims climbed into the mountains, they encountered heavy snow. They turned around. Backtracking, they reached a fork and turned onto BLM Road 34836, known locally as North Fork Gallus Creek Road, a paved logging road maintained by the Bureau of Land Management. BLM Road 34836 had a gate. The gate was there specifically to prevent the situation that was about to unfold. The road beyond it was not maintained for winter travel, ran through remote terrain with no services, and connected to nothing a stranded driver could use. Bureau of Land Management rules required the gate to be kept closed. On the 25th of November, 2006, it was open. Media reports initially attributed the open gate to vandals who had cut the lock, and this version circulated widely. A subsequent investigation reached a different conclusion. BLM employees had left the gate open themselves, a practice done to avoid trapping local hunters and other people who had ventured past it. The intention was not malicious. The effect was that a family in a Saab 92X station wagon drove 23 miles down a logging road before stopping at approximately 1 a.m, when the weather worsened and fatigue set in. They were now deep inside the Rogue River Siskiyou National Forest, in the mountains, in the dark, in a snowstorm, with 2 young children, and no way to communicate with the outside world. The days that followed were a study in deliberate survival under deteriorating conditions. The family stayed with the car, which is what survival training recommends. James ran the engine for heat until the fuel ran out. He and Katie burned dried wood and then magazines to stay warm. When conditions became desperate enough, they burned the car's tires, the black smoke visible against snow, a distress signal that required someone to be looking. No one was looking yet. The Kim family had not told anyone their specific route, and their co-workers in San Francisco did not file a missing persons report with the San Francisco Police Department until November 30, 5 days after the family had become stranded. Search and rescue operations, when they began, focused first on highways and main roads in the area, not on a BLM logging road past an open gate 23 miles from the nearest junction. The Oregon Army National Guard was mobilized. More than 80 civilian volunteers joined the search. Helicopters chartered by James's father, Spencer Kim, an aerospace executive, flew grid patterns over the mountains. For days, nothing. The family was found because of engineering work that had nothing to do with conventional search methods. The Kims had a cell phone, but the logging road and surrounding terrain kept them out of range of any tower. However, 2 engineers at Edge Wireless, Eric Fuqua and Noah Pugsley, contacted search and rescue authorities and offered to help analyze cell tower data logs. On December 2, working through tower records, they found evidence that the Kim family's phone had briefly connected to a cell site near Glendale, Oregon. On November 26, at approximately 1:30 inches the morning, a connection made possible by temporary atmospheric conditions called tropospheric ducting, which can extend radio communications beyond their normal line-of-sight range. The engineers determined that the phone had been in a specific area west of that tower. Investigators used topographic modeling to identify which parts of the mountains fell within a line of sight to that cell site. The location identified, deep inside the wild Rogue wilderness, on a BLM logging road, was where Katie Kim and the 2 girls were found on December 4, alive, inside the burned and snowbound car. James was not with them. On December 2, 2 days before his wife and daughters were found, James Kim had decided to walk out. He had studied a map and concluded that the town of Gallus was roughly 4 miles away. In fact, the distance by road was much greater. He left wearing tennis shoes and light clothing, unsuited to the terrain and temperature. He promised Kati he would turn back if he found no one. He backtracked approximately 11 miles down BLM Road 34836 before leaving the road and descending into a ravine, following Big Windy Creek downhill in the belief, common in wilderness survival situations, that water leads to people. He was displaying the paradoxical undressing that is a recognized symptom of hypothermia, shedding clothing in a state of altered perception, leaving items behind as he moved. Rescue teams, following the trail of clothing, tracked his route. On the 6th of December, 2006, a helicopter crew found James Kim's body in Big Windy Creek, lying on his back in 1 to 2 feet of icy water, fully clothed at the time of death. He was approximately 16.2 miles from where the car had been stranded. He was 1 mile from Black Bar Lodge, a facility that was closed for winter, but fully stocked with supplies. The aftermath of the Kim case produced changes in the physical infrastructure of Bear Camp Road and BLM Road 34836. Signage was improved. The gate and the policy governing its use became a specific subject of investigation. Oregon officials and BLM administrators addressed the maintenance and closure procedures for winter season logging roads more directly than they had before. State transportation officials noted publicly that Bear Camp Road had claimed other victims, that the combination of its apparent accessibility on paper maps and its actual winter behavior had caused deaths and strandings before the Kim family arrived. In 2006, the Oregon Department of Transportation installed an emergency satellite phone box at the summit of Bear Camp Road, one of the few concrete physical changes made in direct response to a specific tragedy on a specific road. The satellite phone was placed there because the mountain had made clear that no other form of communication would work. What the Kim case revealed about logging roads is not the kind of information that appears in tourism materials or on road maps. These roads were designed during the mid-20th century expansion of commercial timber operations in the Pacific Northwest, when the economic calculus favored access over caution. They run through terrain that railroads and highways could not reach, and their grades and curves reflect the priorities of loaded timber trucks, not passenger vehicles. When logging slows, the roads remain, but the maintenance culture that once accompanied them, the institutional knowledge of which roads close in October and which gates must be locked and why, does not always persist. BLM Road 34836 inches, November 2006, was a road that a family could drive 23 miles down because a gate that should have been closed was open, and because nothing along those 23 miles made clear, in a way that overcame the logic of the moment, that the road led nowhere a stranded family could use. The absence of that warning is a kind of infrastructure failure, as specific as a broken bridge. James Kim set out on December 2 to find help for his wife and daughters on a road that had accepted his family's entry without offering them a way out. He was 35 years old. His body was found in Big Windy Creek in the mountains of southwestern Oregon. His daughters were 4 years old and 7 months old when he died. Katie Kim survived. The gate at the entrance to BLM Road 34836 has been the subject of policy review, improved signage, and administrative changes since 2006. The road itself remains, as logging roads tend to remain, carved into the mountains at grades designed for vehicles other than the ones that most often find their way onto them. In the years since James Kim's death, other families have made similar wrong turns onto Bear Camp Road and the roads that connect to it. Most have been found in time. The road does not discriminate between those who know its history and those who do not. It accepts all comers equally, and it makes no promises about what happens after the gate. Forest Service Road 54. The disappearance of Maureen Kelly, Gifford Pinchot National Forest, Washington, 2013. The Gifford Pinchot National Forest covers 1.3 million acres of the western slopes of the Cascade Range in southern Washington state, stretching from the base of Mount Rainier south to the Columbia River. It was named in 1949 for Gifford Pinchot, the first chief of the United States Forest Service and the man who shaped American federal land management in the early 20th century. The forest contains old-growth Douglas fir stands, rivers fed by snowmelt from 3 volcanic peaks, and an infrastructure of Forest Service roads originally cut for the timber industry, beginning in the 1930s and expanding through the post-war decades. These roads, numbered, gated in places, maintained sporadically, and running through terrain that a person on foot can cross in one direction but struggle to exit in another, are now used for hiking, access, hunting, and recreation. They are also the last documented passage of several people who entered the Gifford Pinchot and did not come back. Of those disappearances, the case of Maureen Leanuhea Kelly, which began on the evening of the 9th of June 2013, remains the one for which no physical trace has ever been found. Maureen Kelly was 19 years old and a resident of Vancouver, Washington, at the time of her disappearance. She was of Pacific Islander heritage, born the 26th of September 1993, and had grown up in Vancouver, attending Lewis and Clark High School and Hudson's Bay High School. Friends described her as thoughtful, spiritually inclined, and drawn to the outdoors in a way that went beyond recreation. She had spoken for some time, according to people who knew her, about performing what she called a spiritual quest, an intentional solo journey into wilderness, carried out with minimal equipment and no clothing, a practice with roots in indigenous ceremonial tradition that Kelly understood in her own terms. She had discussed the idea with friends and family before June 2013, when a group of friends organized a camping trip to the Canyon Creek campground in the Gifford Pinchot. Kelly joined them, and those who knew her understood that this was where she intended to go through with it. Canyon Creek Campground is a small, lightly used facility located in Skamania County, accessed by traveling east on Road 54 from the community of Chalachi, then turning onto Road 53, then Road 3701, before descending to the campground entrance. The access route is entirely via Forest Service roads, the numbered logging corridors that form the navigational skeleton of the Gifford Pinchot. The campground itself sits adjacent to Canyon Creek in dense forest, with 8 tent-only sites. The surrounding terrain is characterized by the Skamania County Undersheriff Dave Cox as rough and remote, with steep canyon walls, heavy underbrush, and old timber covering that reduces visibility at ground level to a matter of feet. Sharon Ward of Pacific Crest Search Dogs, who participated in the subsequent search, described the point where Canyon Creek could be crossed near the campground as amazingly steep. The geography is not dramatic in the way that mountain peaks are dramatic. It is dense, enclosed, and difficult. At approximately 5:00 inches the afternoon on the 9th of June 2013, Maureen Kelly removed her clothes and shoes at the Canyon Creek campground, placed a knife, a compass, and a box of matches into a fanny pack around her waist, and walked into the forest. She told her friends she would be back by midnight. The temperature that afternoon was in the mid-70s. The day was clear. Her friends, who understood what she was attempting, did not try to stop her. This detail was noted in every subsequent report about the case, and it becomes more significant in retrospect. The people who knew her best did not perceive her departure as dangerous because they knew her intentions, and believed in her capacity to manage what she had set out to do. They were wrong, or something intervened, or something happened in the dark that night that no one has been able to explain. When midnight passed and Kelly had not returned, her friends called the Skamania County Sheriff's Office to report her missing. The initial search concentrated on the area immediately around the campground and Canyon Creek. Investigators found what appeared to be bare footprints crossing Canyon Creek, heading north toward Forest Service Road 54, the logging corridor that runs through the area and that Kelly would have encountered within a relatively short distance of the campground. The footprints matched the approximate size of Kelly's feet. Beyond the creek crossing and the direction of travel, the physical evidence stopped. K-9 units were deployed, but the combination of creek water, dense underbrush, and the terrain's steep and broken topography limited what the dogs could track. By the night of June 10, search conditions had deteriorated. Cloud cover moved in, preventing helicopter operations, while ground temperatures dropped more than 20 degrees from the previous day's high. Undersheriff Cox noted publicly that a person without clothing in those conditions faced a severe survival challenge, and that the Canyon Creek area was particularly demanding even for an equipped and shod hiker. The formal search lasted approximately 1 week before being suspended, then briefly resumed after Kelly's family and friends publicly protested the timeline. No trace of her was found in either phase. No clothing, no fanny pack, no compass, no remains. Undersheriff Cox stated that the most probable explanation was that Kelly had succumbed to hypothermia on the night she disappeared, and that the density of the forest, combined with the likelihood of scavenging by wildlife over time, explained the absence of remains. He noted that a searcher could literally walk right on top of somebody if they're rolled under a log and not find them in that terrain. This explanation is consistent with the conditions and is the one that Skamania County authorities have maintained. Kelly's friends and family have not uniformly accepted it. Her friend Yasmin told investigators and reporters that Kelly may not want to be found, a comment that suggests the possibility of voluntary disappearance, an intentional severing of contact. Investigators found no evidence to support that theory, and no contact from Kelly has emerged in the years since. The logging road infrastructure of the Gifford Pinchot is relevant to the Kelly case, in the same way it is relevant to others in the region. These roads penetrate the forest to a depth and in a pattern that trails do not. Forest Service Road 54 and the numbered spurs that branch off it were cut to move timber, not to create navigable corridors for people on foot. They are wide enough for vehicles, paved in sections, and they extend into terrain that has no other formal access. A person moving north from Canyon Creek Campground toward Road 54 would reach the road itself, but reaching the road is not the same as reaching help or orientation. The roads dead end, branch, and loop in patterns that reflect extraction logic rather than geographic intuition. In summer, the forest closes over them quickly. At night, without a light, the road surface is the only consistent visual reference. Kelly had a compass and presumably could read it, but knowing north from south does not tell a person on an unmarked logging spur how far they are from a gate, a junction, or another human being. In August 2024, 11 years after Kelly's disappearance, human remains were discovered in the Gifford Pinchot National Forest by searchers working in the area. Initial reports indicated that the remains, a skull and other fragments, were found in a location consistent with a 2013 disappearance. And the Skamania County Sheriff's Office stated that the remains were believed to belong to one of two hikers who had vanished in the area in 2013, Kelly or Christopher Zitzowitz, a 31-year-old from Oregon who had disappeared in the Gifford Pinchot in September of that year. The Clark County Medical Examiner's Office processed the remains. Subsequent reporting indicated that investigators came to believe the remains were associated with Zitzowitz, not Kelly. The absence of any confirmed identification connected to Kelly meant that she remained, officially and in fact, without an accounting. The forest had given back one of its missing and retained the other. Kelly's case belongs to a pattern that the Gifford Pinchot has accumulated across decades. People who enter via Forest Service roads and are not recovered. The specific character of each disappearance differs: season, circumstances, the profile of the person. But the forest's capacity to absorb a human being without returning evidence is consistent. Investigators and search professionals who have worked in the Gifford Pinchot describe the same quality that the Canyon Creek area presented to searchers in June 2013: visibility measured in yards, terrain that punishes downhill movement, old timber so dense that satellite imagery offers almost no useful information about what is at ground level. The logging roads that crisscross the forest are wide enough to feel like arteries, but they function more like capillaries. They carry access in and do not guarantee it back out. Maureen Kelly walked out of the Canyon Creek campground at 5:00 the afternoon on a warm June day, carrying almost nothing, heading north toward a Forest Service logging road in a forest that has 1.3 million acres to offer. She told her friends she would be back by midnight. She crossed Canyon Creek, left footprints on the far bank, and then left nothing else. As of the time of this writing, no confirmed remains, no personal effects, and no verifiable account of her movements after that creek crossing have emerged. The Gifford Pinchot is still there, threaded with numbered Forest Service roads that no longer move timber the way they once did, accessible at trailheads and campgrounds across Skamania County and beyond. Canyon Creek Campground still has 8 sites, a fire ring at each one, and access via Road 3701 off Road 53, off Road 54. The signage at the campground entrance does not mention what happened there in June 2013. Most of the people who camp there will not know to ask. 2-track roads in the western Upper Peninsula. The disappearances of Jan Pattison and Oscar Hinta, Ontonagon and Houghton counties, Michigan. Michigan's Upper Peninsula occupies a narrow band of land between Lake Superior to the north and Lake Michigan and Lake Huron to the south, and it is easy to look at a map and underestimate what that land contains. The western half of the peninsula, covering Ontonagon, Houghton, Baraga, and Gogebic counties, holds some of the most densely forested and least populated terrain east of the Mississippi River. The Ottawa National Forest alone covers 1 million acres, threading through the western UP with a road infrastructure built in layers. State highways to county roads, to Forest Service, gravel roads, to two-track logging trails that vanish into the timber at the edge of visibility. These two-track trails are the capillaries of the system. They were cut to haul logs, not to connect towns, and they do not lead anywhere a person in trouble would want to go. They dead-end in clear cuts. They loop back without warning. In wet seasons, they fill with standing water and become indistinguishable from the surrounding terrain. In the western Upper Peninsula, 2 people disappeared near these roads in the span of 5 years, in the same general region, and neither of them has ever been found. Oscar Francis Hinta was 64 years old in November 1988, a retired custodian who had spent his working life in Calumet, Michigan, in Houghton County. He was a diabetic with a heart condition, described by those who knew him as a man of regular habits and familiar routines. Deer hunting was one of those routines. On the 16th of November 1988, Hinta went hunting with a friend in the Kenton Ranger District of the Ottawa National Forest, in Duncan Township, southern Houghton County, approximately 6 miles northwest of the small community of Kenton. The 2 men entered the forest along USFS 1100, a gravel road running through the Ottawa, and separated to hunt in different directions, a standard practice among hunting partners in that region. They agreed to meet back at their vehicle by 10 inches the afternoon. When Hinta did not return at the appointed time, his friend waited, then notified authorities several hours later. The search that followed was substantial by the standards of a rural Michigan county in 1988. Houghton County Sheriff's Office deputies and detectives worked alongside Michigan State Police troopers from the Lance Post, a MSP K-9 team from Negaunee, U.S. Forest Service Rangers, Baraga and Ontonagon County Search and Rescue, a U.S. Coast Guard helicopter, volunteer fire departments from Duncan Township, and local hunters who knew the terrain and joined the effort on their own. The search was significantly hampered almost immediately. A freak weather system moved through the area, dropping record rainfall before turning to heavy, wet snow. The snow-covered ground sign erased any tracks Hinta might have left, and made helicopter operations ineffective over the forest canopy. The search lasted 3 days. It found nothing. No trace of Oscar Hinta has ever been recovered from the Ottawa National Forest. No body, no clothing, no orange hunting jacket, and no rifle. A .30-06 caliber Weatherby or Sacco rifle with a scope is not an object that disappears easily, and in over 35 years of subsequent searches, no fragment of it has been located. The Western Upper Peninsula collected another case 5 years later in the same general region, different county, same character of terrain. Jan Marie Pattison was 38 years old, born the 3rd of June, 1955, and had lived in Greenland, Michigan, a small community in Ontonagon County, for most of her life. She was disabled following back surgery in 1983 to repair a ruptured disc, and she was largely dependent on her family for support. She knew the area around Greenland well. On the evening of the 26th of August, 1993, Pattison drove to the Rousseau Bar, a rural tavern situated approximately 7 miles south of Mass City, in Ontonagon County's forested interior. She met 2 elderly male acquaintances there, men she knew, and accepted their invitation to see one of the men's new cabin. She left the cabin at around 10:30 at night and was never seen again. 6 days passed before Pattison's car was found. On the 1st of September 1993, her blue and silver 1981 Ford Tempo was discovered stuck just off a 2-track Orv trail near Vista Drive Road, in territory so rugged and heavily forested that Ontonagon County investigators later described the area as among the thickest forest and underbrush in the western Upper Peninsula. The car had gone off the trail and mired itself. Everything Pattison would have needed was still inside. Her keys, her purse, $2 in cash, and her cigarettes, which people who knew her said she would never voluntarily leave behind. Her wallet and her driver's license had been left at her house before she went out that evening. The Michigan State Police, the Ontonagon County Sheriff's Office, and the FBI were all brought into the investigation. Searches of the area turned up no trace of Pattison herself. What the search did find were footprints. Investigators discovered prints near the car that emerged from the bank of a creek, crossed onto dry ground, and continued along the logging trail for approximately 3 to 4 miles before ending at a gravel road. Police took plaster casts of the prints. They were a women's, size 7, with a sole pattern consistent with the nurse's shoes that Pattison typically wore. It was never definitively confirmed that the prints were hers. This ambiguity became central to the case. Investigators and family members found themselves at odds over what to make of it. Pattison's family argued that the area where the car was found was so remote and unfamiliar that she would not have driven there alone, and raised the possibility that someone had moved the vehicle after her disappearance, placing it on a logging trail. She had no reason to travel, leaving the footprints to create a false trail. Law enforcement investigated this theory and could neither confirm nor rule it out. The official explanation offered by Ontonagon County investigators held that Pattison had been drinking the night she disappeared and was also taking prescription pain medication for her back injury. Under the influence of both substances, the theory went, she had made a wrong turn after leaving the cabin, driven onto the 2-track trail, become stuck, and then walked away from the vehicle in a state of confusion. The logging trail where the car was found would have been dark at that hour in late August, with no ambient light from any nearby settlement. A person on that trail, disoriented at night, would have no reliable way to identify which direction led out of the forest. The footprints that followed the trail for 3 to 4 miles, then stopped at a gravel road, are consistent with someone who walked a long distance and then either left the area in a vehicle or continued into the forest beyond the point where prints could be tracked. Unconfirmed sightings placed a woman matching Pattison's description in the Houghton area and along Forest Highway, 16 inches the days following her disappearance. Those reports were never verified. The 2-track ORV and logging trail network around Mass City and Greenland was, by the mid-1990s, a relic infrastructure. The commercial timber operations that had originally cut these roads through the Ontonagon County interior had largely wound down, and the trails had passed into recreational use, accessed by hunters, snowmobilers, and ATV riders who knew the system. By the time investigators returned to look for Pattison years later, the specific ORV trail near Vista Drive Road, where her car had been found, had grown almost entirely closed with vegetation. The Ontonagon County investigator who described this detail also noted that the John Bucanero case, another disappearance in the same general region from the late 1980s, had been resolved only when human remains were found by accident in an area that search teams had already covered, within approximately 1,000 feet of the original search center. The forest had held Bucanero for years while searchers moved through the same ground. The implication for Pattison was direct and uncomfortable. Oscar Hinta disappeared on a gravel Forest Service road in the Ottawa National Forest on a November afternoon with a hunting rifle and orange clothing visible from 100 yards. Jan Pattison disappeared from a 2-track logging trail in Ontonagon County on a summer night with a purse, car keys, and cigarettes left behind in a mired vehicle. The two cases share the landscape more than the circumstances. Both involve the western Upper Peninsula's interior roads, built for extraction, and long since absorbed back into a forest that does not make distinctions between the roads it was cut to accommodate and the forest it was cut from. Houghton County Sheriff's Case number 2046-88 remains open for Hinta. The Doe Network carries Pattison as case file 2095 DFMI. Neither case has generated a confirmed physical finding in the years since the initial searches. What the Western Upper Peninsula offers is space, and the logging road network that threads through it offers access to that space in increments small enough to seem navigable. USFS 1,100 inches, the Kenton Ranger District, and the two-track trails around Vista Drive Road near Mass City are specific addresses in a forest of 1 million acres. They appear on maps. They can be driven to. They accept the arrival of anyone who finds them, in any season, at any hour. What they do not offer is any guarantee of return. Oscar Hinta went down a gravel road in November 1988 and did not come back at 1:0 inches the afternoon. Jan Pattison drove down a logging trail in August 1993 and left her cigarettes in the car. The forest keeps what it takes, and what the Western Upper Peninsula has taken, in documented cases across decades, it has not given back. The Road to Oro Grande. The disappearance of Terrence Woods, Jr., Nez Perce Clearwater National Forest, Idaho, 2018. The Nez Perce Clearwater National Forest covers 4 million acres of north-central Idaho, stretching from the Oregon border to the Montana border and encompassing some of the most remote terrain in the contiguous United States. Idaho County, where most of the forest sits, is itself 8,500 square miles in area, making it larger than Connecticut and Rhode Island combined, with a population of around 16,000 people. More than 60% of Idaho's total land area is federally managed, and Idaho County contains the largest county seat in the lower 48 states by area without a traffic light. The roads into the forest's interior are the product of a century of layered industrial use. Mining roads cut during the gold rushes of the 1860s and 1880s, logging roads added throughout the 20th century, Forest Service access routes maintained at varying degrees of regularity. The ghost town of Oro Grande sits at approximately 6,000 feet elevation in the Oro Grande area of the forest, named for the placer gold operations that ran through the late 19th century. By 2018, it was accessible primarily via forest roads and was not accessible to anyone who did not already know the way in. On the 5th of October 2018, a film crew from London drove those roads to the Penman Mine, a disused gold mine just outside Oro Grande, and one member of that crew ran into the forest and was never seen again. Terrence Shamel Woods, Jr. was 26 years old when he disappeared, born the 24th of October 1991 and raised in Capitol Heights, Maryland. He had graduated from the University of Maryland in 2013 and spent 5 years in London, attending the American International University and building a career in television production. He worked on The Voice UK for ITV and on a BBC documentary about elephant conservation before returning to the United States in 2018. His former colleagues in London remembered him as responsible, dedicated, and unusually conscientious about sleep and self-care in an industry that often asked both to be sacrificed. He left London for Maryland, was living at his father's home, and took a freelance contract with Raw TV, a London-based production company that produced content for the Discovery Channel. The assignment was several weeks of location work on the first season of a series called Gold Rush, Dave Turin's Lost Mine, which followed a host exploring disused mines in the mountainous American West. Terrence's father, Terrence Woods Sr., dropped him at the airport on the 30th of September 2018. It was the last time he saw his son. The film crew of 12 people spent the first days of October in Montana before moving to Idaho on October 4. Terrence was reportedly in good spirits through this period, texting his father photos of the landscape and checking in regularly. Then something shifted. On October 3, before the move to Idaho, he called his father late at night and said he was planning to come home early on October 10th, without explaining why. He sent an email to Raw TV producers around the same time claiming he needed to leave the production early due to concerns about his mother's health. His mother, Valerie Woods, was not ill and had no scheduled surgery. On October 5th, the day of his disappearance, Crew members later told investigators and reporters that Terrence had been unusually quiet and appeared to be struggling emotionally. A 911 caller from the crew that evening stated directly that Terrence had been having a very hard time emotionally and had experienced what the caller described as a mental breakdown earlier that day. His family has consistently disputed this characterization, noting he had no documented history of mental illness. At approximately 5:00 the afternoon on October 5, as the crew was finishing work near the Penman mine, Terrence told two of the local women who had been helping with transportation that he needed to use the bathroom. Associate producer Simon Gee, who was nearby, noticed moments later that Terrence had dropped his two-way radio on the ground. He looked up to see Terrence running at speed toward a steep cliff at the edge of the filming area. Gee shouted. Other crew members shouted. Terrence did not stop. He ran down the cliff and into the thick forest below, disappearing into the trees. Gee told Terrence Woods Sr. later that his son had been running faster than he had ever seen anyone run. Several crew members went down after him. The cliffside terrain was severe enough that they returned torn and bleeding. They could not follow the route Terrence had taken. Investigators believe, based on crew accounts, that Terrence may have reached a road at the base of the cliff before the trail went cold, but no confirmed sighting placed him on any road after that point. The Idaho County Sheriff's Office received the missing persons report at 6:41 that evening. Due to the late hour and fading light, active searching did not begin until the morning of October 6. The search that followed was extensive by any reasonable measure. Dog teams from Clearwater County were deployed. Ground searchers covered the terrain on foot and ATV. The Clearwater County Backcountry Rescue Helicopter flew aerial patterns. U.S. Forest Service personnel joined the effort. Infrared-equipped helicopters swept the forest canopy looking for heat signatures. The Idaho County Sheriff's Office coordinated across agencies for a full week. The Oro Grande area presented searchers with the particular character of the Nez Perce Clearwater interior, terrain ranging from 5,000 to 7,000 feet in elevation. Deadfalls of large trees accumulated over multiple years. Dense conifer cover, rivers fed by early autumn snowmelt, and wildlife including bears, cougars, and wolves that the Idaho Missing Persons Clearinghouse specifically identifies as a factor in the difficulty of searching Idaho County. After 7 days, the search produced no physical evidence, no clothing, no footprints, no indication of the direction Terrence had traveled after disappearing into the trees. NamUs assigned his case number MP 52962. Idaho County Sheriff Doug Giddings stated publicly that he did not suspect foul play from the film crew, but had not ruled out that something bad had happened. The logging and mining road infrastructure around Oro Grande is, in a meaningful sense, the reason that area was accessible to a film crew at all. The Penman mine sits at the end of a forest road system whose origins trace back to 19th century extraction and 20th century timber operations. Without those roads, a production company based in London could not have transported 12 people and their equipment to a ghost town at 6,000 feet in Idaho County. The roads create a kind of perimeter around otherwise impassable terrain. They carry access in, but do not define what exists off them, and the forests between the roads in that part of the Nez Perce Clearwater are among the least navigable in North America. A person entering that forest off a road, on foot, moving fast, in the late afternoon in early October, would encounter night within hours. October temperatures at that elevation drop sharply after dark. Terrence was wearing black cargo pants and a light brown sweatshirt, described by the Idaho Missing Persons Clearinghouse manager as unprepared for the weather conditions. The question of why Terrence ran is the one that has divided every account of his disappearance since 2018. The crew's initial report to 911 emphasized emotional distress and a mental breakdown. His family, led by his father, has never accepted this framing, and their objections are specific. Terrence was the only black crew member on a 12-person shoot in rural Idaho. He had communicated to family and to Raw TV that he wanted to leave, providing different explanations to each. His suitcase, when his father eventually retrieved it, was pristine inside, except for a pair of muddy boots. His father told NBC News in 2023 that Raw TV had never called him to say his son was missing, that he had to learn about the disappearance through other channels, and that the production company had kept contact with the family minimal in the years since. Raw TV has maintained that it cooperated fully with Idaho County investigators and that the Idaho County Sheriff's Office, after reviewing all correspondence and circumstances, found no evidence of mistreatment or foul play. The FBI has not been brought in as of the time of this writing, because the Sheriff's Office has not requested federal involvement. What the Oro Grande area and the access roads to Penman Mine represent, in the context of this series, is the furthest point the logging road geography tends to go. Not a stranding or a confusion of terrain, but a deliberate departure from known ground into unknown forest. At speed, without preparation, in circumstances that remain genuinely contested by everyone with knowledge of them. The Nez Perce Clearwater does not distinguish between the person who enters it by accident and the person who enters it on purpose. It is 4 million acres of forest, mountain, river, and deadfall, accessed via roads that were originally built to take something out. And it treats everyone who moves off those roads the same way. It closes over them. Idaho County Sheriff Giddings said, with specific reference to Terrence's case, "Idaho County is one of the worst places to go missing." He was speaking in a factual register, not a dramatic one. The terrain description supports it. Terrence Woods Jr. last posted to his private Instagram the day he disappeared. The photograph showed a dense stand of fir trees with a river running between them, under an overcast October sky. The caption was one word: "On the 5th of October, 2018, at approximately 5:00 inches the afternoon, he dropped his radio on the ground near the Penman Mine in the Oro Grande area of the Nez Perce Clearwater National Forest, ran down a cliff, and entered that forest." His father has said publicly, "With death, you have two things: closure and healing. I have nothing. No remains, no clothing, no confirmed sighting, and no physical evidence have been recovered in the years since. The forest roads that brought the production crew to Oro Grande are still there. They are accessible by vehicle to anyone who knows the route in. What those roads connect to, beyond their own gravel and asphalt, has not changed and does not change. Forest Road 112 and the Allegheny High Country, the disappearance of Cassie Sheets, Monongahela National Forest, West Virginia, 2021. The Monongahela National Forest covers 921,000 acres of the Allegheny Mountains in eastern West Virginia, encompassing virtually the entire highland core of the state. It is a forest built on top of an industrial wound. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, timber companies systematically stripped the Allegheny High Country of its old-growth hardwood and red spruce stands, leaving eroded hillsides and choked streams. The flooding of the Monongahela River Valley in March 1907 was attributed in large part to the destruction of upstream forest cover, and it contributed directly to the political pressure that produced the Weeks Law of 1911, which authorized federal purchase of Appalachian watershed land. The Monongahela National Forest was proclaimed in 1920, built from those purchased lands. Almost all of the trees within it today are second growth, regrown over a century from the stumps and cut-over ground left by the logging era. The railroad grades and skid roads built to move timber are still visible in the landscape. Some have been converted to Forest Service roads, some to recreational trails, and some simply absorbed back into the regrown forest. The roads that exist in the Monongahela today sit on top of that extraction history, and they carry the public into a forest that, for all its recovered beauty, was shaped by the industrial logic of removal. Spruce Knob is the highest point in West Virginia, rising 4,863 feet above sea level in Pendleton County. It sits within the Spruce Knob Seneca Rocks National Recreation Area, the first national recreation area designated by the Forest Service in the country, established in 1965. The summit is accessible via Briery Gap Road and Forest Road 274, a paved but narrow and winding climb that requires careful driving at any speed. Near the top, Forest Road 112 continues past the Spruce Knob parking area, transitions from pavement to gravel, and descends several miles to the Seneca Creek drainage below. Seneca Creek and the trail system along it form one of the most remote backcountry sections of the Monongahela, with nearly 60 miles of trails running through red spruce stands, open meadows, and along fast-flowing mountain streams. Elevations across the area range from 3,000 to over 4,800 feet, and the Forest Service notes that freezing temperatures can occur at any time of year, with snow possible from October through April. On the 11th of March, 2021, a 24-year-old woman named Cassie Sheets drove to Spruce Knob with two men she knew, walked into the forest, and did not come back. Cassie Renee Sheets was from Upper Tract, West Virginia, a small community in Pendleton County, about 25 miles northwest of Spruce Knob. She was 24 years old and the mother of 3 children. Her mother, Arlene Shelton, later described her to Dateline NBC as someone who was not an experienced hiker. It was not unusual for people to drive up to Spruce Knob for a walk on the trails, but it was not a casual destination by any measure. The hike to the summit and the surrounding trail system involves elevation, changing weather, and terrain that punishes unprepared visitors, particularly after dark. On the afternoon of March 11, Cassie and her 2 male companions arrived at the Spruce Knob area and began hiking. Photographs taken that day showed Cassie near red spruce trees, which her mother noted could have been taken anywhere in that part of West Virginia. West Virginia State Police Sergeant Andy Teeter, who led the investigation, told Dateline he reviewed the photographs and believed they were taken at Spruce Knob on the day in question. After that, the visual record ends. The 2 men who had gone to Spruce Knob with Cassie emerged from the forest separately after midnight in the early hours of March 12. One was found waiting by the car they had traveled in. The other was spotted by a passing motorist coming out of the forest. Both men told investigators they had become separated from Cassie during the hike. State Police Sergeant Teeter interviewed both men the day she was reported missing, and again in the days following. Cassie's cell phone, which she used only over Wi-Fi, had last been active at a friend's house earlier in the day of March 11, before the Spruce Knob trip. It could not be tracked into the forest. State police launched searches on the mountain and along the trails leading to the summit. No trace of Cassie Sheets was found. Her family hired a private investigator, Kevin Ryan of Philadelphia, in October 2021, after nearly 10 months of searching, produced nothing. Her mother told Dateline their hope was running thin. "I just miss her so much," Arlene said. "We're trying to be as strong as we can." The Seneca Creek area of the Monongahela, where Cassie's remains were eventually found, sits below the Spruce Knob summit on the opposite side from the main access road. Forest Road 112 descends from pavement to gravel past the summit intersection and continues down to the creek drainage. The trail system along Seneca Creek begins as an old roadway, wide and smooth, following the creek downstream. It is described by trail guides as the kind of route that begins approachably and grows progressively more demanding as it continues. The entire drainage sits within a backcountry section of the forest, with no vehicle access beyond the Forest Service road. Once a person leaves FR 112 and enters the Seneca Creek corridor on foot, the available navigation points are the creek, the trail blazes, and the ridgelines on either side. In March, with snow possible and temperatures capable of dropping to freezing after dark at that elevation, the drainage offers no shelter and no quick exit. On the 29th of December 2021, 9.5 months after Cassie Sheets disappeared, a hunter in the northern Seneca Creek area of the Monongahela National Forest encountered human skeletal remains. The hunter reported the location to West Virginia State Police. Sergeant Teeter was led to the site. The remains were undisturbed. Based on personal items found at the scene, investigators believed immediately that the remains were those of Cassie Sheets. The West Virginia Medical Examiner's Office received the remains and worked with the Smithsonian Institution and Marshall University on analysis, a process that reflects both the condition of skeletal remains found in outdoor settings and the institutional complexity of identifying them. The investigation was designated ongoing. Trooper First Class K.C. Raymond was assigned as lead investigator. The DNA confirmation took years. On the 24th of January 2025, the West Virginia State Police confirmed publicly that recent DNA testing, conducted using samples from members of the Sheets family, had positively identified the skeletal remains as those of Cassie Sheets. Her sister, Tabitha Price, posted on social media, "After 3 long years, we have some closure. Not the closure we wanted, but now we won't be wondering." The cause of death was not publicly disclosed in the confirmation announcement. The investigation remains active and ongoing. According to the West Virginia State Police Franklin Detachment, no charges have been filed in connection with the case, and no official determination of manner of death has been made public. The 2 men who exited the forest separately in the early hours of the 12th of March 2021 have been interviewed but not publicly named or charged. The Forest Service road system that threads through the Spruce Knob area was built in layers across the 20th century, with CCC crews constructing roads and trails between 1933 and 1942 on top of railroad grades and skid roads left over from the logging era. FR 112, which runs from the summit towards Seneca Creek, is part of this inherited infrastructure. It does not carry the character of a road built for visitors. It is narrow, it transitions from pavement to gravel past the summit, and it descends into a drainage that has no amenities, no services, and limited cell coverage. The Monongahela National Forest as a whole averages between 30 and 60 inches of annual precipitation depending on elevation and aspect, and the March weather at Spruce Knob can include snow, ice, and rapid temperature drops after nightfall. A person separated from their group in that terrain after dark, at that elevation, in March, is in a genuinely dangerous situation, regardless of their experience level. The distance between the Spruce Knob summit area and the northern Seneca Creek location where Cassie's remains were found represents the forest's capacity to hold what enters it. That stretch of terrain, accessible via FR 112 and the Seneca Creek Trail system, is not a vast wilderness by Western standards, but it is dense, cold, and unforgiving in ways that the access road and the paved summit approach do not prepare a visitor to encounter. Her mother wondered aloud to Dateline whether Cassie had even been on the mountain when she disappeared, a question the photographs addressed but did not entirely resolve. The investigation remains open. The Forest Service road that descends from the summit towards Seneca Creek is still there, gravel past the pavement line, leading into a drainage where the trail runs along an old roadway, wide and smooth at the start, increasingly difficult further in. Cassie Sheets was 24 years old and the mother of 3 children when she entered the forest near Spruce Knob on the 11th of March, 2021. Her remains were found 9 months later by a hunter in a remote section of the Seneca Creek drainage and were not identified for 3 more years after that. The West Virginia State Police confirmed her identity in January 2025. The investigation is ongoing. The Monongahela National Forest, whose road infrastructure was built on the ruins of the logging industry that once stripped the same mountains bare, accepted her entry and did not return her to the people who drove her to the trailhead. Her sister's words, posted publicly when the identification was confirmed, named both things at once: closure and the knowledge that it was not the kind of closure anyone had wanted.